Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Last Week Beyond Earth. I'm your host, Zach, and with me is my co-host, David. David, can you give us a little bit of a hint about what happened last week?
Yeah, last week had a couple big launches with Starship and Europa Clipper, and the International Aeronautical Conference also took place in Milan, Italy. So we're going to cover some of the things that happened at that conference.
All right, sounds great. Let's get into it.
First off, we're going to talk about the historic SpaceX Starship Flight Test 5. The launch took place on October 13th at 7:25 a.m. Central Time. The rocket took off from SpaceX's Starbase in Texas. The launch took place one day after the FAA granted launch permissions and consisted of a fully stacked rocket made up of both a Super Heavy booster and Starship. The massive rocket launched without issues, with the booster and Starship successfully separating. As Starship continued on its suborbital flight to the Indian Ocean, the Heavy booster made a flip and returned towards the launch site. During the course of the live stream, SpaceX announced that they would make an attempt to catch the booster if conditions at the launch tower, called Mechazilla, and the Heavy booster were both nominal. As the booster made its way towards the launch site, the go-ahead for this attempt was given. Roughly 7 minutes after liftoff, the booster used its engines to maneuver towards the launch site. 2 arms on Mechazilla, referred to as chopsticks, were going to be used to attempt to catch the booster. With more grace than one would expect, and maybe a little extra fire, Mechazilla was able to successfully catch the booster between the chopsticks. This is the first time such a feat had been attempted, and is a step towards the rapid reusability that SpaceX has been seeking. As for the Starship upper stage, it continued on its trajectory towards the Indian Ocean. The heat shielding for the spacecraft had been upgraded, as Flight 4 saw plasma burning through the flaps during re-entry. This time there still was some burn through, but not nearly as much as the previous attempt. Starship was able to fully maneuver and conducted a controlled landing near a pre-placed buoy. Shortly after the controlled splashdown, the buoy cameras caught a large fireball erupting from the spacecraft. No date has yet been set for the next flight, however, it's suspected that it could be towards the end of the year.
Starship wasn't the only big launch last week. The following day, on the 14th, saw the launch of NASA's Europa Clipper. The largest planetary science spacecraft ever developed by NASA rode to space atop a SpaceX Falcon Heavy. Liftoff occurred at 12:06 p.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The spacecraft is on its way to gather data on Europa, a moon of Jupiter. It is thought that below the icy surface is a massive ocean of water. This makes the Jovian moon a promising location to look for life beyond Earth. Europa Clipper will be looking to determine if there are places below the surface that could support life. The spacecraft is equipped with a number of instruments to help in its investigation. There are cameras and spectrometers to gather high-resolution images and composition maps of the surface and the thin atmosphere. There's also an ice-penetrating radar, which will be used to determine if there is, in fact, water below the surface. There is a thermal instrument that will be used to detect warmer patches of ice that might indicate a recent eruption of water to the surface. Finally, there are instruments to measure the composition of tiny particles within the thin atmosphere and in space around the moon. The flight out to Europa will take roughly 5.5 years. The journey will cover roughly 1.8 billion miles, or 2.9 billion kilometers, and will use gravity assists from Mars and Earth. Once it reaches its destination, it will spend nearly 4 years orbiting Europa as it conducts the science portion of its mission.
The European Space Agency has announced a new program called Moonlight. The program will see a constellation of satellites in place around the moon with the purpose of providing navigation and communication services. The services can be used to conduct autonomous landings and to explore the lunar surface. Additionally, the network will provide reliable communications between Earth and the Moon. The constellation will consist of 5 satellites, 4 for navigation and 1 for communications. The satellites will be connected to Earth through 3 ground stations. The constellation will be placed strategically in order to provide coverage of the lunar South Pole, a region of great interest for long-term habitation. The first phase of the program will be Lunar Pathfinder, a communications satellite that will be launched in 2026. Following Pathfinder, the program will gradually build up the network, with operations beginning in 2028 and full operations in place by 2030.
At IAC 2024, Axium Space and Prada revealed the flight design of Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or AX-EMU. The AX-EMU will be the spacesuit used on the lunar surface during the Artemis 3 mission. The engineering expertise of Axiom was complemented by the materials and production expertise of Prada. The AX-EMU has built upon the suits developed by NASA. According to Axiom, their suits have increased flexibility, performance, and safety. Astronauts can work within the suit for at least 8 hours during EVAs. It has been designed to accommodate many body sizes of both men and women. It has also been designed to protect astronauts from the extreme temperature changes that they will face at the lunar South Pole. Axiom has already begun testing of the suit, completing a fully pressurized simulation. Testing will continue, with final design review taking place in 2025.
With the planned end of the International Space Station in 2030, NASA is looking to the private sector to provide new space stations through the agency's Commercial LEO Destinations program. Vast Space, a company looking to win such a contract, has announced plans for a new space station called Haven 2. The station is called Haven 2 because Vast Space already has plans in place for a small station called Haven 1. The first demonstration station will be used to prove that Vast has the technical capabilities to create space stations and is currently planned for launch in 2025. If selected by NASA, Vast plans to have the first module of Haven 2 in place in orbit in 2028. The module will use what's learned from Haven 1 in order to improve on its capabilities, as well as to provide a larger living area. The first module will then be followed up with 3 more modules over the next 2 years. Looking beyond 2030, the company plans to further expand the station with more modules and a larger central hub.
The U.S. Space Force announced the membership of France and Germany to the multinational force Operation Olympic Defender. Germany formally joined on October 11th, with France joining a few days later on the 14th. Other nations already part of the force include the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. Operation Olympic Defender was originally established under the U.S. Strategic Command in 2013. It eventually expanded into a multinational effort between close allies. The focus of the operation is to optimize space operations, enhance resilience of space-based systems, and to synchronize efforts to deter hostile actions in space.
NASA has announced an updated commercial crew flight schedule. SpaceX's Crew 10 will launch in February, and Crew 11 will launch sometime in July. The first fully operational Starliner mission was scheduled for 2025, but has been put on delay due to the issues suffered during the CFT flight. Another nation has signed on to the Artemis Accords. Estonia has become the 45th country to do so. The Accords are a set of guiding principles prompting beneficial exploration of space.
Firefly Aerospace has been selected for a multi-launch agreement by satellite maker True Anomaly. The agreement will see Firefly's Alpha rocket launch True's Jackal spacecraft. True Anomaly has been contracted by the U.S. Space Force to participate in the Victus Haze mission. Spire Global has announced that they have entered into a mission agreement with space software company Mission Control. Spire will build and operate the Lemur 6 spacecraft, which will test Mission Control's Spacefarer AI software.
German-based space company OHB has been selected by ESA to provide 2 satellites for the Earth Observation Harmony mission. The contract is worth 280 million euros, or about $303 million. Redwire Space is preparing to deliver 2 satellites for ESA's Proba 3 mission. Proba 3 will require the 2 satellites to fly in formation to conduct coronagraphy.
Moon exploration company iSpace and Korean robotics company Unmanned Exploration Laboratory have announced a partnership. The mission will see UEL provide a lunar rover, which will be transported to the moon aboard an iSpace lander. Sierra Space has been awarded a contract by NASA to provide a trash compaction and processing system. The need to compact, stow waste, and reclaim water will be of vital importance for long-duration missions to the moon and beyond.
There was a lot covered this week. Zach, what stood out to you?
Well, first off, the Starship launch. That was pretty big. Watching the Mechazilla and the chopsticks catch super heavy. It's something that's never been done before, and to see it happen was almost unreal. It seemed unreal watching it, but I mean, huge accomplishment for SpaceX. Also, Europa Clipper, another big launch, big mission that's been in the works for quite some time. So seeing it finally on its way. Kind of sad that it's going to take over 5 years to even get there before we get to start collecting data or seeing the results of that mission, but we're on our way with that one. And then finally, I'm interested in the Vast Space's Haven 2. The kind of competition for the commercial space stations is something I've been following along with. I knew that they were already planning Haven 1, so having them announce Haven 2, even though Haven 1 hasn't even launched into space yet,
Haven't quite got there yet.
It was interesting, but I'm kind of excited about the prospects of this larger space station that they're planning. The, I guess, modulability of it, that they're planning on adding. Oh, hello. This is Grom. This is our friend's cat. He's very annoying while trying to film. Anyway, the modulability of the space station, the fact that they're planning on having, multiple modules added, multiple modules added onto the space station in the future to make it a much larger one. I thought that was great. And then, of course, Estonia joining the Artemis Accords. As I like to say, the more in space, the merrier. So that's a nice little extra cherry on top of the news story. How about you? What caught your eye?
Well, for sure, the chopsticks actually catching the heavy booster is such a crazy moment.
Yep.
And that was really cool that they were able to do that on their first try, no less. A little sad that they're still having some problems with the plasma melting through things. Hopefully they get that figured out pretty quick. And as you mentioned, I am really excited by their Europa Clipper mission. It's just mind-boggling how much math goes into everything and how they can shoot for a space that's 5.5 years in the future.
Yep.
Like, we're going to aim that way, and it's over there now, but it's going to be there in the future.
Yep.
That's so cool to me. And the mission itself seems really important as well.
Maybe finding life.
Yeah, life. Even just finding water would be a big deal.
Yep.
So those are the two things that stood out the most to me. Of course, we'd always love to hear from you. Please let us know down below what you think.
All right, and that's all from us this week. Please join us again next week for more Beyond Earth news.
Thanks for watching. Shoo.
No.